Welcome back to Health Code Blueprint. Today, we're diving into ICD-10-CM Chapter 20, which covers the external causes of morbidity. This chapter doesn't describe the injury itself, it explains the story behind the injury, how it happened, why it happened, and the circumstances surrounding it. Understanding these codes helps us capture the full context of an event and support accurate reporting, research, and prevention efforts. Quick disclosure. This presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal, compliance, or coding advice. Always follow official guidelines and your organization's policies. Let's get started. External cause codes are never the principal diagnosis. They are always secondary, and their purpose is to capture 5 key elements: how the injury occurred, the intent behind it, where it happened, what the patient was doing, and the person's status at the time. These details help build a complete picture of the event. There's no national requirement to report external cause codes unless a state or payer specifically mandates it. Even so, voluntary reporting is strongly encouraged because this data supports injury prevention research and public health strategies. In other words, your coding contributes to real-world safety improvements. To tell the full story of an event, we rely on 4 key elements. First, the cause and intent, what happened and why. Second, the place, where the event occurred. Third, the activity, what the patient was doing at the time. And fourth, the status, whether they were working, volunteering, a student, or involved in military activity. When all 4 are documented, we get a complete, accurate picture of the event. External cause codes apply to injuries, infections, and health conditions in the A00 T88 and Z00 Z99 ranges. And the 7th character, A, D, or S, must match the 7th character of the injury code. That keeps the story consistent between the injury and the context. Whatever 7th character the injury code uses, the external cause code must mirror it. If the injury is an initial encounter, the external cause code must also reflect an initial encounter. Same for subsequent encounters and sequelae. Alright, now that we've covered the broader mechanics, let's go back to our 4 pillars and take a closer look at how to actually apply them in real coding scenarios. Starting with the first pillar, cause and intent. This is really the what happened and the why it happened. If the provider documents the intent clearly, whether it's accidental, assault, self-harm, or something else, we code exactly what's written. If the intent isn't documented at all, we default to accidental. And transport accidents are always considered accidental by definition. Sometimes the event happens in a sequence, like the patient falls and then strikes an object on the way down. In those cases, we don't separate the events or pick the one that caused the worst injury. We use the combination code that reflects the sequence exactly as it occurred. Pillar 2 is all about the place of occurrence. Essentially, where did the event happen? Was it at home, at school, in a parking lot, at a park, or on a military base? This code gives us the environmental backdrop of the injury, which can be really important for understanding patterns and risks. A couple of key points here. Place codes are typically assigned only once, and usually only at the initial encounter. We don't keep repeating them at every follow-up visit. And if the documentation doesn't give us a location, we don't guess, but we also avoid using unspecified place codes unless we truly have no information to work with. The goal with this pillar is simple. When the setting is documented, we capture it, because it helps complete the story of the event. Pillar 3 focuses on the patient's activity, basically, what they were doing at the moment the event occurred. This could be something like walking, cooking, exercising, playing a sport, or doing a work-related task. The activity code helps fill in that behavioral context so the story of the event feels complete. We only assign an activity code when it actually adds value. If it doesn't change the understanding of the event, or if the documentation doesn't support it, we leave it out. And there are a few situations where activity codes don't apply at all, things like poisonings, adverse effects, misadventures, or sequelae. The key idea here is simple. If the provider clearly documents what the patient was doing and it helps clarify the circumstances, we capture it. If not, we don't force it. Pillar 4 looks at the patient's status, basically, what role the person was in at the time of the event. Were they a civilian at work? A member of the military? A student? A volunteer? This pillar helps us understand whether the event may fall under things like workers' compensation or other specific reporting requirements. We only assign a status code when another external cause code is being used, and only when the documentation supports it. If the event is a poisoning, an adverse effect, a misadventure, or a sequela, then status codes don't apply. The idea here is simple. When the provider clearly documents the person's role and it adds meaningful context to the event, we capture it. If it isn't documented or doesn't apply, we leave it out. When multiple external causes are documented, there's a strict order: abuse first, then terrorism, then cataclysmic events, then transport accidents, and finally all other external causes. Activity and status codes always come last. Abuse is always coded as assault. And if the perpetrator is known, we must assign a perpetrator code from Y07. Abuse overrides all other mechanisms, even if a vehicle or weapon was involved. The intent takes priority. We only use terrorism codes when the event is officially identified as terrorism. If it's only suspected, we classify it as assault. Secondary effects, like dust inhalation after the event, use Y38.9, but not for the initial injury. Sequela codes use the seventh character, S, to describe late effects of a previous injury. We use them only when treating the late effect itself, not for routine follow-up care. And we never combine a sequela code with a current acute injury code. When reporting space is limited, we prioritize the cause and intent code that best aligns with the principal diagnosis. Place, activity, and status codes are the first to be omitted when space is tight. Before finalizing your coding, double-check that the external cause is sequenced secondarily, the seventh characters match, the priority hierarchy is followed, and place, activity, and status codes are used appropriately and only when supported by documentation. Accurate external cause coding does more than complete a claim. It contributes to public health research, injury prevention, and a deeper understanding of how events occur. Your precision helps shape safer communities and better outcomes. Thank you for joining me in this session. I hope to see you in our next video.